Start. Dim.
Hello again, welcome back to Illegally Cited. This is BGFH and I'm back for another iOS accessibility video. And before we go on and look at more apps and features and iOS and voiceover gestures, I do want to stop in this video a little bit and talk a little bit about choosing the right iOS device. So now that you've gotten to see some of the possibilities and built-in features that you can do with either magnification and or speech, you may be thinking, I should probably get one of these iPhones or iPads or something like that. So there are some differences that I want to make note of. And when I talk about iOS devices, remember we've got the iPod Touch, the iPhone, the iPad, and the iPad Mini right now. So I am recording this on the iPhone 5. And at the time of recording this, the iPhone 5 is the latest version of the iPhone available. And there's the 5th generation iPod Touch, which is quite similar to the iPhone 5. And then you have the you have the older versions of the iPhone and the iPod Touch. So there are a few things that you really want to consider when buying an iOS device, especially if you're looking at accessibility features. Yes, you have VoiceOver and Zoom and all that stuff in all of them, starting from the 3GS forward. But I'll just say right now that if at the time of this recording, if you are looking at getting an iOS device, I would not recommend going any earlier than the iPhone 4S as far as the phone goes, and I would actually recommend getting the 5th generation iPod Touch. If you don't want the phone, I would highly recommend, if at all possible, to get the latest version of the iPod Touch over the older ones. And here's why. So, the iPod Touch and the iPhone are pretty similar in specs. They are, the older ones up to the iPhone 4S and the 4th generation iPod Touch. They're a little bit smaller than the iPhone 5 and the new iPod. As you can tell on the home screen here, I've got 5 rows of icons on my home screen here, whereas the 4S and older iPods and iPhones only have 4. So you get a little bit more screen real estate, which is really nice when you're looking at long web pages or emails and things like that. Not to mention that you have a better, faster processor in the new iPod and the iPhone 5. Now, the other reason I highly recommend getting the latest device that you can and not going earlier than the iPhone 4S or the newest generation iPod is because of the camera. And you're probably thinking at this point, okay, well, I can't see very well, or I can't see at all. Why in the heck do I want a camera? Oh, trust me, you will want a camera. So with the older versions of the iPod, the 4th generation and earlier, and the iPhone 4, and even to the 4S to some degree, the cameras aren't quite as good. And especially on the iPod, the old iPod Touch is terrible. The camera is really low resolution, and it does not work very well at all. So there are apps, yes, you can use the built-in camera app to take pictures and take videos, which I've done on the channel so far, a little bit. But where the camera really comes in handy, and I'm going to try to cover as much as I can, talking and hopefully showing you some of these other apps in future videos. But there are, just to give you an idea, there are apps that you can identify money. Paper money. So if you have no vision, you can't read dollar bills. You don't want to rely on someone else to tell you, is this a 5 or a 10, and hopefully I'm not getting ripped off. There's a money identifier. If you're familiar with the KNFB Reader product that allows you to snap a picture of a piece of typed paper and it'll take a picture of it, recognize the text, and read it aloud to you. There's a cheap app that allows you to do that. There are several apps that allows you to do that, and they work very, very well. As I mentioned earlier in this video, if you're low vision, there are several camera apps that will turn your phone or iPod into a portable CCTV. And I use these all the time, especially the CCTV apps. I use them all the time and I love them. So those are just a couple of uses. I'm probably there's barcode scanners. So I want to go into
page 2 of 4.
Okay, I didn't want my phone to go to sleep. There are, if I'm in the kitchen and I want to see between, is this a can of tomato soup, chicken noodle soup, baked beans, or what is it? I can take a picture of the barcode, or with another app I can take a picture of the actual can and it'll tell me what it is. So, as I said, you will definitely find uses for the camera, so I would highly recommend getting an iOS device with a good camera. Moving on to the iPad line, which is the tablets. You have the iPad series, which is the 10-inch screen model. And then you have the fairly new iPad mini, which is a 7-inch model. And I would recommend these most for a low vision user. One of the things while working with a lot of blind and low vision users, both in my job and just in general, is I find that a lot of people, a lot of blind and visually impaired users or blind users have more trouble with the larger touchscreen, because while the interface is pretty much exactly the same, items are spread a lot further apart. There's a lot more screen real estate to go through, and so if you can't spatially, see where it is at least a little bit, it's definitely usable, and some people still do like having the larger screen. Maybe they want to use it with their family, and so they get an iPad so everyone else can use it with them. But I know a lot of people have said they like the smaller screen because it's much easier to go from one item to another, and they don't have to, move their finger as far, but it just, makes a lot more sense. So, if you're thinking about getting an iPad, you may want to try it out first. If you, go to an Apple store or, a Best Buy or something and play around with it a little bit. Or if you know someone else who has one. But if you don't have any vision and you're a little bit concerned about the larger screen, give one a shot, because you may like it and you may find it a little bit frustrating. And if you do try an iPad and you do find it frustrating, try the iPhone or the iPod, because it is such a smaller screen. A lot of people take to that a lot quicker. So I do want to mention that. And also, one thing to note about the iPod and the iPhone versus the iPad series is, let's say I go into settings here.
Settings.
We've been here a few times. Now, on everything that I've done in these series of videos so far, everything that I'm looking at in the settings area has just been on the one screen. Whereas on the iPad, because you have a larger screen, what happens is this first list of options. So you've got your
airplane mode,
Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and then you got your general on all your list of apps and different main level settings. That will appear always on the left side of your tablet. So then if I were to go to General, let's say,
General, settings.
Now all of my options just, are on the screen on the phone here, and my old menu has disappeared. However, on the iPad and the iPad mini, these options are actually going to just appear on the right-hand side of the screen. So think of it on a computer where if you use Outlook or Outlook Express or even Windows Explorer, let's say, you've got your tree view area and you got all your little stuff on the left side, and then you've got your body of your your main Explorer window or your main mail stuff on the right. So there are more, there's a lot more to it on the iPad, and that's where another reason where, like, especially blind users tend to get a little bit more lost, because they may not know that, oh, this is actually still on the screen, there's no back button, but they'll actually, some of the settings will still be there. So again, the smaller screen, yes, you have to go back and forth a lot more, but in a way it makes a lot more sense if you can't see it for that reason. It's a little bit hard to explain,
Settings. Back button.
but I do want to bring that up because that is something that does throw people off. And it's not just in the settings. So if I were to go to Mail, like, I'll just pop into Mail real quick.
Mail. 2 new.
If I go here,
Boxes. Unread. Amazon. Unread. Unread.
let's see.
Apple. Google Play. Unread.
Apple.
Google Play. Get started.
So let's say I
Google Play.
go to a message. I have my mail here, and I'll cover this in the mail video here shortly, but I don't have my list of messages anymore. Whereas if I double tapped it on the iPad, those message list would still be down the left side of the screen. So that's an idea, or that is
Home.
that is one of the major differences in how the things are laid out on the smaller screened iPod and iPhones versus the iPads. And regarding the cameras,
X-Wrap. X-Wrap.
let me pop back into here.
X-Wrap. Ready.
Regarding the iPad cameras and processor, I would recommend, if you want to go the iPad route, you would definitely want to go with either the iPad mini or the third or fourth, especially the fourth generation iPad. Because like the iPod Touches, for the longest time, the cameras compared to the iPhones were terrible. I have an iPad 2 right now, and while it does have a camera, it doesn't have a flash. And the megapixel count is actually very low. I don't even remember what it is, but it's terrible. So, while I might be able to use it as a really grainy CCTV, you can forget about doing barcodes with it. You can forget about doing OCR with it. You can forget about doing a lot of those other tasks. So that's something that you really want to kind of also consider. So bottom line is, if you can do it, I would highly recommend getting the latest version of whatever device, the iPod, the iPad, or the iPhone. I would, if possible, but really at this time, don't go any further back than the iPad 3 or the iPhone 4S or the iPod Touch 5th generation. Finally, the thing you have to consider is storage size. Right now they come in 16, 32, and 64 gigabyte sizes, and they start out at, well, depending on what the device is, but they go up $100 each size you go up. So 32 is $100 more than the 16, and 64 is more than the 32, etc. Kind of spendy, but you really want to look at what you want to do, because if you're using a lot of audio, you're going to read a lot of audiobooks with Audible or Bard or Learning Ally, and then you're going to do all kinds of apps. Maybe you want to put some music on there. Maybe you're going to do some videos or pictures or whatever. You probably do want, I typically recommend people at least go with the 32 if they can afford it. That's a good medium size, and then beyond that, if you really want more, if you really do use a lot of media, you probably want to go with the 64. So I have the 64 one right now, and now that I'm actually doing YouTube videos, I'm glad I have that space, because these videos take up a lot of memory until I upload them. So those are a few things to consider when considering an iOS device. I hope you found it helpful. Just let me know if you have any questions down below, and I will talk to you guys next time.